Look up. Observe the skies. For millennia, they have been both map and myth, guiding sailors and shepherds, lovers and liars, prophets and princes. Yet, the light we see today is already ancient, a relic of their past, as it was then. We still gaze at ghosts. This is how time flows, not as a meandering river, but as an ever-devouring ocean. We are here, and then we are not. Most of us will leave no more trace than a breath on a cold window. No monuments, no ruins. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, forgotten will be most of us. For all our striving, that remains a cardinal truth. It just is. Here today, gone tomorrow, onwards, oblivion. So, what does it mean to behold? Never mind create something that we know will outlast us? To experience a mark on a world that will continue orbiting the sun long after we're gone? To dream in scales of time, past and present, so vast, they stretch beyond comprehension? Beyond the echoing corridors of time? To build a clock that ticks for millennia, when your own heart has only a few billion beats left? To witness it all? Now, from the pyramids to the pixel, humans have always sought to transcend the present moment, to rebel against our predefined sense of scale. We imagine, build, and destroy. Like building sandcastles at the edge of an infinite ocean, it is here, between the pulse of a second and the silence of an eon, the long now resides. We, merely its witnesses, and our art, our stories, our dreams, they are but whispers in the wind. Yet, we keep whispering. There is an empty canvas. You may place a pixel upon it, but you must wait to place another. Individually, you can create something. Together, you can create something more. This is the description of r/place, a 72-hour collaborative crowdsourced social experiment hosted on Reddit that first took place on April 1st, 2017, officially launched by Josh Wardle, who is also known for creating the viral game Wordle. The concept was simple. There was a digital canvas consisting of a 1,000 by 1,000 grid of blank pixels. Choosing from a palette of 16 colors, users from the world over could contribute by changing the color of a single pixel in the canvas every 5 to 20 minutes. The time between placements was a parameter set to ensure that no single user could dominate the canvas, thus, effectively social engineering the collaborative aspect of the experiment. And so it was, over time, more than 1 million users joined in collective creation to place approximately 16 million pixels to create memes, fictional characters, famous artworks, logos, flags, you name it, in an ever-evolving mosaic. Initially, in the early hours of the experiment, the pixel placements were random and haphazard attempts at image creation. Until there emerged a corner of entirely blue pixels now known as the Blue Corner. Eventually, thousands of subreddits rallied their members together in a bid to quite literally leave their own unique mark as they competed for space on the canvas to do so. Perhaps inevitably, there emerged a self-declared cult called The Void. Their mission? To engulf r/place artworks in nothing but black pixels. The final result? A chaotic yet poignant snapshot of the conflict, cooperation, and competition in the collective effort of meaning-making and legacy-making in the face of entropy. A mouthful? Yeah, but it's true. All of these forces interplayed in a microcosm of deep time, with entire eras of randomness and microcultures emerging and competing for their legacies, thriving and eroding within hours, in a specific now, gone forever. What is it but an apt modern metaphor for the rise and fall of civilizations in the endless march of time? No? What would you do with a single pixel? Would you still do it knowing that single pixel would vanish into the sprawling chaos of the canvas? What's a pixel worth to you? A 1,000 trees forest has been planted in Norway. It will supply paper for a special anthology of books by 100 authors of any nationality or age to be printed in 100 years. Each year, one writer will contribute a text to be unread and unpublished. Inaugurated in 2014 with Margaret Atwood, that leaves 89 more texts from 89 authors to go until the year 2114. It is called Future Library. Till the time comes, the writings and trees which will be used to print them will be held by the Future Library Trust in a 100-year contract with the city of Oslo, eventually to be housed in the silent room in the Deichman Bjørvika Public Library in Oslo, also built from trees cleared from the forest. Unread and inaccessible until 2114, the key words in the selection process of writings are imagination and time, with the length of the piece entirely up for the author to decide. It could be a letter, a word, a sentence, a poem, or an encyclopedia. What the Future Library embodies is an intergenerational act of faith in the continuity of human culture, as each author grapples with writing for an unknown audience in an unknown future. But who's to say that reading will still be a thing then? Who knows? What we do know is that the probability that the first person to read a book from the Future Library is already born somewhere is not zero. Even 100 years, well, 89 now, will go by in an instant. And maybe the probability that some of us will get to read a book from the Future Library isn't zero either. It's curious. It took a while to figure out what exactly I felt when I first stumbled upon this project. In a way, it was like the opposite of how I felt reading about the burning of the Library of Alexandria as a kid. Kinda, you know, that gaping feeling in your chest, imagining all that knowledge lost to the fires, never to be illuminated again. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust and whatnot, you know the drill. But in a twist of fate, which makes for good art, I guess, the Future Library is the unburning, aka growing of a library. Literally. All that knowledge and its potential concealed, just waiting for its unveiling, which is to say, that feeling of melancholy I had as a kid persists as it echoes from the Library of Alexandria to this future library. There's always so much we can never know. So I do wonder, will books still even be a thing? Will there even be a civilization to print it? What if the library's forgotten? What if the trees burn down, never to be harvested? What if there is no witness? Fragile, isn't it? The canvas of the long now. So far, we've worked our way around the edges of the fragility of the human experience of time and everything it entails. Legacies that can never be guaranteed, knowledge that might never be uncovered, etc. The specter of time's march has always haunted us, no doubt. We humans are so wonderfully limited. So, in an era characterized by instantaneity where immediacy is prized over endurance, the notion of stretching our temporal imagination across centuries or millennia becomes both radical and restorative even. Consider the following. In a chapter titled Twitter, Randall Munroe, in his book What If, tells of a story about a bird and a mountain that plays with our very human sense of scale. So the story goes, every 1,000 years a bird flies by to sharpen its beak against the mountain, wearing away an infinitesimally tiny amount of rock material with each contact. The thought experiment is, over infinite time, incredibly, the bird's actions will eventually wear the mountain down to nothing. But over how long a time period exactly? Well, when the mountain is worn to the ground, even then, only a day of an eternity would have passed. That's time for you. What this image illustrates is the layers of timescales that exist around us. Timescales which are rarely intuitively perceived. Timescales so vast that even the unimaginable endurance of an immortal bird eroding a mountain with its beak registers as a mere blip by comparison. It's not often we are forced to confront the passage of such timescales in our daily lives, let alone think outside our human sense of scale. Unless you're a scientist, historian, or an artist, I guess. But what if we did? Maybe it would change the way we smile at a stranger because we all, for better or worse, live together within this long now, a part of the lineage of humanity, sharpening its beak on the eternal mountains of time. Behind a bell jar at the University of Queensland lies one of the longest-running scientific experiments in history, the pitch drop experiment. It consists of a funnel filled with a tar-like substance called pitch that appears solid, but is actually a very slow-moving liquid. Started in 1927 by Professor Thomas Parnell, he first heated the pitch and poured it into the sealed glass funnel. After 3 years of cooling, the stem of the funnel was cut to allow the pitch to flow under normal room temperature conditions. With a viscosity 230 billion times that of water, it has dropped a grand total of 9 times since, an average of 1 drop every 10 years, and will supposedly continue to do so for the next few centuries. Despite its incredible slowness, no one has ever directly witnessed a drop fall in real time in person. There is a live stream though, and it is alleged that on the 8th drop in 2000, the camera magically failed. So maybe you can watch the live stream and be the first witness to the next drop. It's quite obvious the statement the pitch drop is making, that time is always passing and thus change is always occurring even when we cannot see it. However, the assumption we often naturally make is that we miss seeing change occurring only if it happens fast. The pitch drop illustrates that the opposite is also true. The limits of our perception goes both ways. Sometimes, things happen so slowly across such a long period of time, we miss everything due to our lack of endurance. Housed in a lighthouse in London, there echoes a tune that plays endlessly. Developed and composed by Jem Finer, Longplayer centers around a 1,000-year-long musical composition. It began playing at midnight on the 31st of December 1999, and will continue to play until the last second of 2,999. Characterized as a living 1,000-year-long process, it is designed to play without repetition. Though the piece was originally composed for Tibetan singing bowls, Longplayer is currently programmed by an algorithm and performed by computers. Besides the main listening post in the lighthouse, there are several other satellite listening posts around the world and a live stream. The hope for Longplayer is that the composition adapts to technological changes by being designed to seek out its own survival strategies. To that end, there is a mechanical fail-safe installation that uses a pendulum-driven mechanics to operate independently of digital systems, thus safeguarding itself against technological obsolescence. Another alternative form of the Longplayer is a graphic score for 6 players and 234 singing bowls, of which a performance, titled Longplayer Live, based on this score took place over 1,000 minutes in 2009. Similar to the Future Library, Longplayer is also entrusted to a trust, the Longplayer Trust, which is described as, and I quote, a lineage of present and future custodians invested with the responsibility to research and implement strategies for Longplayer's survival. So there arises a pattern now, where stewardship as an act of faith becomes integral to the continuity of legacy in the face of the long now. There is no lineage without a witness and a participant. A piece of technology may become obsolete, but so long as humanity endures, the Longplayer can theoretically be adapted to the times. In essence, by situating humanity within the vast expanse of deep time, the Longplayer, not unlike the Future Library, naturally forces a reckoning with our role as gracious custodians rather than voracious conquerors. In a town in Germany, there is currently a pyramid under construction. It has been under construction for decades, actually. The construction began in 1993 and is scheduled to end 1,200 years later in 3,193. Conceptualized by German artist Manfred Laber, the Zeit Pyramid, which literally translates into time pyramid, is a conceptual art installation in the town of Wemding, Germany. So this is how it goes. Every 10 years, one large and heavy concrete block is added to the pyramid, tapering as it rises to the top. Of course, it's a time pyramid after all. The completed structure will consist of 120 blocks. So far, only 4 blocks have been added, representing 40 years, a very human scale. But as each decade passes slowly and deliberately, the perspective of the scale changes as generations are born and gone. Slowly but surely through the passage of time, the Zeit pyramid will also erode in its parts as the whole is constructed to its completion, with each subsequent block fresher than the previous block. Unfolding over the course of 1,200 years, the Zeit pyramid embodies a commitment to think beyond our everyday human scales. Every 10 years, the town comes together to celebrate the addition of a new block as they reflect on their own history and the legacy they are leaving behind to a future they will never witness. A small but profound gesture to the long now, passing the baton from the present to the future. It must be noted, as with most human projects like the Future Library and Long Player that confront the long now, very rarely will they last without any human stewardship. The Zeit pyramid is ultimately a community effort. Without the dedication of future generations to continue placing blocks according to the schedule and blueprint, they might as well just complete it tomorrow and get it over with. So in this regard, the pyramid is an intergenerational act of faith. Layers of communion from the present to the future to the past, bound by a sense of shared responsibility and humanity. It is a quiet, powerful reminder of humanity's place within the grand scale of time. The pyramid gradually rises, not as a monument to death, but as whispers to the living. Remember us. Remember you. Deep in the basement of a university, there is a 2,000 cubic feet crypt. A swimming pool was modified into an airtight chamber, measuring 20 feet long, 10 feet high, and 10 feet wide to create the crypt. Its walls are lined with plates of enamel, secured in place with pitch. It sits on a bedrock floor with a stone roof that is 7 feet thick, with a stainless steel doorway that was welded permanently closed after all the oxygen in the chamber was removed and replaced with inert nitrogen to create a low reactivity environment to prevent oxidation, decay, and degradation of stored materials. Located at Oglethorpe University in Georgia, USA, the Crypt of Civilization is a chamber designed to preserve human knowledge and artifacts of 20th century life. Sealed on May 28, 1940, the crypt is intended to be opened in 8113 AD, 6,000 years later. Why 6,000 years? Well, by June 1940, when Thornwell Jacobs, the initiator of the project, and his team had collected all the 640,000 items for the crypt, he calculated that 6,117 years had passed since the start of the Egyptian calendar, and thus he proposed that the Crypt of Civilization also be opened after another 6,117 years in 8,113. Financed by industrialists and philanthropists, the crypt was deeded to the United States government, its heirs and assigns, to be held in trust for the people of the 82nd century. Perhaps most interestingly, the crypt contains a device called a language integrator. It is a modified mutoscope, which is a hand-operated movie projector with sound. What this device would do is basically teach English to the 82nd century generation that would open the crypt. Essentially, it's a type of Rosetta Stone. I will say this. Unlike the other projects I have mentioned thus far, the crypt is perhaps the most naive in its outward optimism, if that makes sense. It is filled with hubris. Whereas the other projects are open-ended and even accepting and accommodating of their possible obsolescence, the crypt stubbornly holds on to its premise. Yes, it is a simple object at face value, a time capsule. Yet beneath that simple idea lies a desperate plea to not be forgotten or erased by the sands of time. It seeks to freeze the present moment and cast it to the long now. It is less about the deep passage of time and more so about pausing civilizations in a snapshot, whereas the others hope to adapt to the tides by actively unfolding over time. All these works allow us to feel time on a vast scale by embracing continuous change, collective participation, and slow transformation over time. But the crypt? It's type A, uptight, secretive, and ultimately inert in its vision. Though, now that I've said this, I suspect it can also be viewed in the opposite way, where the crypt captures the defiant spirit of humanity. Whatever the case may be, undeniably, there is something so poignant yet endearing, and so human, about the existential desperation it embodies with the preservation of what makes us, us. All the works thus far and the crypt provoke us to think beyond our lifetimes and sense of scale, but in completely opposite ways. While the crypt seeks to overcome the eternal cycle of history, the others embrace the quiet act of illuminating the long now itself. It's curious, isn't it? In 1995, a computer scientist lamented, "I want to build a clock that ticks once a year. The century hand advances once every 100 years, and the cuckoo comes out on the millennium. I want the cuckoo to come out every millennium for the next 10,000 years." 30 years later, this clock, aptly named the Clock of the Long Now, is still under construction. Towering at nearly 500 feet, this is no ordinary timepiece. Every noon its chimes ring a melody with a sequence that won't repeat for 10,000 years, a time span equal to the entirety of human civilization. This is achieved through a set of 10 bells rung in a different order each day, programmed by an algorithm that ensures no repetition. That is over 3.5 million unique chimes for 10,000 years. The clock's millennial dial creeps so slowly, it might as well not move at all during our lifetime. The clock's face is a cosmic map. Its dials track not hours or minutes, but millennia, tracking the slow dance of celestial bodies, the precession of the stars, the wobble of the moon's orbit, the glacial pulse of planetary time. Yeah, I don't mean this just poetically, but quite literally. On its face is an orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system, which tracks the positions of the planets and the moon as they move through their orbits. Surrounding this orrery is a display that shows the current year in a 5-digit format, so 02025 instead of 2025, an intentional design choice for the 10,000-year clock. Conceived by Danny Hillis and stewarded by the Long Now Foundation, the Clock of the Long Now is a mechanical monument designed to tick for 10,000 years deep inside a remote mountain in West Texas. Carved into the limestone heart of the mountain, its gears, weights, and pendulum are crafted from durable, corrosion-resistant materials, titanium, ceramic, and sapphire bearings. It is powered not by electricity, but by the earth itself, apparently harvesting energy from seasonal temperature shifts and the occasional hand crank of a visitor. Encoded in its mechanism are instructions for future generations on how to maintain and repair it. And in its inner workings, there lies a manifesto of humility. We built this for you, but we do not presume to know you. Thus far, there's one thing we've taken for granted: that time ticks for us. We forget that the ticks of time are a very human invention. The clock, as we know, is a product of humanity. That is to say that many of the usual units displayed on our clock, seconds, hours, dates, may have little meaning after 10,000 years. But beyond our current arbitrary systems of time measurement, there remains one constant. That is, every human culture has counted and will continue to count days, months, and years, in some form legible to them, always based on lunar and solar cycles. I mean, it is no coincidence that astronomical calendars are among the first relics of culture, and often the mark of past civilizations. And this is where the Clock of the Long Now becomes uniquely potent. It collapses the myth of linear time. Its dials measure celestial cycles that predate Homo sapiens and will outlast our species. In doing so, it reframes our existence. The story of time began long before us and will continue long after. Our lives are brief flares in a darkness that stretches infinitely forward and back. Yet, in that darkness, we find kinship, with ancestors who charted the same stars and descendants who will puzzle over the clock's purpose long after our languages have turned to dust. With that in mind, the clock's 10,000-year mission is both laughable yet awe-inspiring in its tenacity. Never mind that in cosmic terms, 10 millennia is a blink. In civilizational terms, its units of measurements might as well be Greek. Yet, what else is there to do? Sure, even the mountain that houses it will erode and the stars it tracks will drift. Even titanium will succumb to entropy. But its builders persist. They must. As we must. This is the human condition. We construct cathedrals on fault lines, write symphonies for audiences unborn, knowing full well that nothing really lasts. The clock does not deny this truth. It enshrines it. Its very existence whispers, "We built this to fail, but we built it anyway." To visit the clock of the long now is to journey into a cathedral of deep time, where the air hums with the patience of celestial dynamics set to the background of the soft, relentless ticking of gears that will outlast empires. You begin at dawn, like any true pilgrimage. You will hike through a desert, where thorny brush and steep inclines test your resolve. 1,500 feet above the desert floor, you will reach the entrance, hidden within the rock face. You rotate the handles of the jade door, rimmed in stainless steel, an almost alien presence against the rugged stone. You enter. You close the door behind you to keep out the dust, the wind, and whatever else time might send its way. Walk on, a second steel door will greet you. You turn the heavy handles, enter, and seal the door behind you again. Suddenly you are in complete darkness. A dark tunnel stretches for hundreds of feet. You will walk, guided only by instinct and the muffled echo of your own footsteps, until, just barely, you notice a soft glow on the floor, a literal light at the end of the tunnel. Look up. Far above, a tiny pinprick of light pierces the blackness. A 500-foot vertical shaft looms over you as tall as a 50-story skyscraper with strange mechanical forms suspended in the void. The clock greets you. It has been waiting. To stand before the clock is to not only feel the weight of deep time, but also its liberation. It whispers, "This is the long now." In this paradox, we cultivate the essence of the human spirit, a defiant flicker of light in the cosmic dark, daring to glow brighter because it knows it will not last. The clock ticks on, and so must we, the stewards of the long now. Cast into the cosmic ocean, there is a message in a bottle. It has now traveled over 14 billion miles from its original position. In 40,000 years, it will pass within 1.6 light years of another star, an epic cosmic pilgrimage. In 1977, NASA launched twin Voyager probes, Voyager 1 and 2, on an interstellar odyssey. Both Voyagers carried not just scientific instruments, but identical copies of a small, profound artifact, the Golden Record. A 12-inch gold-plated copper phonograph disc, etched with sounds, music, images, and greetings from Earth. Conceived and curated by a team led by Carl Sagan, this Golden Record was designed as a message in a bottle to capture the tapestry of human experience. A snapshot of humanity in the 1970s. Etched on the record are the sounds of whales, birds, wind, thunder, the crackle of a wildfire, the heartbeat of a mother, the laughter of a child, Bach's concertos, Chuck Berry, indigenous Australian songs, greetings in 55 languages, etc., that have echoed for tens of thousands of years. And encoded in analog form is a selection of 115 images that range from mathematical principles, units of measurement, solar system diagrams, the Vitruvian Man, human anatomical drawings, DNA diagrams, images of families from different culture, everyday life, architecture, vehicles, animals, plants, landscapes, etc. All of it an attempt at capturing the brief shimmer of our human civilization in the grand expanse of cosmic time. The record itself contains instructions in symbolic form explaining how to decode the images. A hypothetical extraterrestrial intelligence would need to recognize the time-sequenced nature of the binary signal and reconstruct it line by line, similar to how an old TV signal is displayed. The record's creators knew the odds. The chance the Golden Record would ever be found is infinitesimal, yet they made it anyway. It is humanity's collective act of faith, a vote of confidence in the universe's capacity for wonder. It asks for no guarantees, seeks no applause. It simply exists, a testament to our stubborn resolve to matter, even if only to ourselves. Like the future library, which plants trees today for books that won't be read for a century, or the pitch drop experiment, which unfolds on a scale that outlives its observers, the golden record humbly and audaciously confronts the limits of our existence and our perception of it by communicating across deep time on a time scale far beyond human life to an unknown future, or perhaps to no one at all. A confession of our fragility. Just as a traveler in a new city might feel overwhelmed by the vastness of the city, we are travelers in the cosmos, humbled by the immensity of the unknown. In the end, the golden record is not just a message to extraterrestrials, it is a message to ourselves. A reminder that across the vastness of time and space, we are not the heroes of the universe's story, but participants in its unfolding. As of now, Voyager 1 is currently the farthest human-made object from Earth, moving into interstellar space, while Voyager 2 is on a slower trajectory, but has also entered interstellar space beyond the influence of the sun's solar wind. As they sail onward, carrying its cargo of human whispers, it reminds us, to be brief, to be fragile, to be alive, is its own kind of eternity. As illustrated by this audio etching on the record, we are trying to survive our time so we may live into yours. It was my first trip to this particular city. I'd passed through its neighbor once as a military brat between bases, but we never stayed long anywhere. That was the rule of my life: arrive, adjust, leave. But this time was different. I was here alone. Stepping off the platform at this one station, I braced myself for the impact of the city. It hit like turbulence. Voices overlapping, footsteps scattering against concrete, the relentless flicker of LED signs advertising 100 things at once. It wasn't unfamiliar, not really. Every new city had its own rhythm, its own rules of inertia and terms of engagement, but they were fundamentally similar, I'd come to know by then. This was a period in time when one could conceivably still do without an iPhone on hand 24/7. You see, up until then, my life had been measured in deployments, in rotations, in orders that dictated where home was supposed to be. But there in that city, for the first time, strangely, time didn't feel like something I was running out of or trying to outrun, a series of short nows from one to the next, formidable and unforgiving. There in that peculiar city on that particular day, the second hand moved steady, certain, and potent. It felt like something vast, something that had opened up and stretched both behind and ahead of me, waiting patiently to be understood. So here's the thing. Now is never just a moment. In fact, the longer your sense of now, the more past and future the now holds. And the long now is a recognition that the precise moment you're in grows out of the past and is a casting for the future. You see, sure, there is a quiet magic in gazing up at the night sky, knowing the stars we see are the same ones that guided ancient sailors, shepherds, lovers, liars, prophets, and princes through the shadow of eternity, that the light we borrow today is a ghost. Okay, but it can also be existentially terrifying that time, indifferent and unyielding, swallows near everything. Our lives, a mere flicker between epochs of erasure, erosion, and entropy. So, with its cathedrals built over centuries, and algorithms designed to accommodate millennia, the works of the long now that I've talked about is not a plea for immortality, but a mirror. And in it, you see the reflection of everything you will never know, never experience, never witness. And that's okay. You are but a flicker, a spark, a breath. Here and then gone. You will never stand on a distant star and feel its light on your face. You will never hear the songs of civilizations that rise and fall long after your name has been forgotten. You will never know the colors of a sunset in a world in skies you cannot even imagine. You will never see the whole picture, and yet you are part of it. Somehow, impossibly inextricably, you are part of it. You join a lineage of witnesses, Stone Age astronomers tracking solstices on bones, medieval monks transcribing manuscripts by moonlight, engineers encoding knowledge into the cloud, all whispering across millennia. We, too, dared to care. This is the bittersweet paradox of the long now, the unshakable saudade of bearing witness to time's vastness, even as we grapple with the truth that our legacies will fade from its ledger. The long now is not a promise of remembrance. It is a celebration of the miracle that we, brief, brittle, blazing, got to be here, now, to see any of it.